Back on Connection here on TKO8 Television. Thanks for joining us today. We have a special show on Connection. We normally have different nonprofit organizations and businesses from around the area come in and send representatives to talk about what's going on around our viewing area. We cover about 6 counties, and we try to keep everybody informed of what's going on. Perhaps you don't know about a lot of the entities here and what they do. But today we actually have a special guest with us, 3rd District Congressman Steve Womack. Steve, thank you for being with us.
Dennis, my pleasure. Thanks for having us.
We appreciate you coming in town. A lot of things going on these days. And let me just ask you a quick one. If you said in one word the difference between the first few days in Washington, D.C. of our president today and our past one, what would you say the two differences?
Optimism.
Optimism. That's a big
excitement. A refreshing. And a look there. When I start with optimism, because for the first time since I've been in Washington, I was elected in 2010. For the very first time, we now know that we have a pathway toward putting America on the right path. For the previous 6 years and for all of the 8 years of the Obama administration, we knew that that path eventually would end up at a roadblock. And that roadblock would either be, for the first couple of years, the Senate under Harry Reid, but by 14 we were able to claim the Senate, or we knew that that roadblock would end at the desk of the president, where he was proud to tell you that if he didn't like what Congress was doing, and he didn't, that he would use his phone and his pen and he'd do things his own way. So optimism. We are optimistic that now that we have unified the government, conservatives in charge of the House and the Senate, and now we've got somebody in the White House who's willing to help us in our quest to pursue a legislative agenda that we think is right for America. We now know that we can get some things done, and we are doing it already.
Congressman, when I listen, see, read in the national media, we're going to talk about that in a moment too, but the leftist side of it, and all the, right now they're trying to have the town hall meetings, and you've got these little groups out there, and their main purpose seems to be is to keep everything in a disarray. Mm-hmm. I realize that Trump surprised a lot of people because everybody thought it would go the other way until right at the end. I don't think his party, and I don't think he individually felt like it was going to do that, because he was always optimistic even to the end. But I think the other group got surprised, and they're so negative, and they're, instead of taking that and converting it to enthusiasm and what can they do to help the nation, help individuals, they're doing everything in the opposite direction.
Let me tell you why Donald Trump knew that he was onto something. I'll characterize it this way. Throughout the course of the campaign, which extended beyond really a couple of years, during the course of the campaign, while Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and people that subscribe to the notion of bigger government, higher taxes, more spending, while they were talking to the cheerleaders, Donald Trump was appealing to the student body. And if you just kind of look at that analogy, kind of break it down, in Washington, a lot of attention is paid to the leadership of the party that has the White House. They have the megaphone, so the media is paying attention to them. The media sides with that leftist agenda, and I think we have more than just anecdotal evidence of that. But so the cheerleaders of the White House and the country and of that progressive machine that was really moving our country in a bad direction while the cheerleaders were doing their thing, Donald Trump was out here appealing to everyday, nameless, faceless people, working class Americans, extending across both party lines, who have become frustrated with the fact that they are being left behind and nobody is paying attention to them. Now, I will tell you, Dennis, that House Republicans were paying attention, but we were 1/2 of 1/3 of government for the first 4 years that I was in the Congress. And in the last couple of years, we were joined with a majority in the Senate. But we didn't have that until 2014. And so naturally, the things that we were doing in the House for those first 4 years were hitting that roadblock in the Senate. And Harry Reid, our stuff went there to die. Mm-hmm. And Harry was one of those cheerleaders. And then, of course, when Harry retires and we reclaim the Senate with a 52-seat majority, 54-seat majority for 2 years, and now 52, we were able to we ran into some roadblocks, but we were able to get some of our legislative agenda through and to the desk of the president, and that was new to us. But now, because of Senate rules, and even then because of Senate rules, particularly the filibuster rule that you got to have 60 to stop a filibuster, that we, in order to help manage the expectations of the viewers that are watching this program, you still need to know that anything substantive that we're going to try to do, with only a couple of exceptions, are still going to have bipartisan support. Yeah. Because we're going to have to get 60 votes to stop a filibuster. And that means that we're going to have to hold our 52, and we're going to have to add 8 from the other side. Now, when that happens, you have to know going in that if you're going to negotiate with them, they're going to want something. So it may not be perfect what we are able to end up with to get it on the desk of the president, but it will be a step in the right direction. And we'll just have to work on getting that filibuster-proof majority in the Senate at some other point in time. So I'm optimistic because we now have the ability that should we be able to get something on the desk of the president, now we have somebody that will sign it. So I mentioned a couple of exceptions for you in this segment, and I want to cover those very briefly.
Sure.
One of them is the repeal of Obamacare. Repeal and replace of Obamacare. And there's a lot of anxiety on it right now. There's a lot of people that think you shouldn't repeal it without replacing it. And I agree in principle with that thought process. But here's the difficulty. In order to repeal Obamacare, if we had to go against a filibuster, we wouldn't be able to get it done. So we're going to use what we know as budget reconciliation from the FY17 budget. It's a technique, it's a strategy within that budget framework that allows us to avoid a filibuster if we want to do something like repeal of Obamacare. So that's how we're going to repeal it, without a filibuster. To replace it, however, we can't do that in a reconciliation move. So we're going to have to do it substantively through regular order. That means we're going to have some help on the other side of the aisle to get it through. So that's the first thing. That's the anomaly in the FY17 budget picture. In the FY18 budget, which we will do later in the year, we will also use reconciliation in FY18 to accomplish tax reform. Again, in order to prevent being stonewalled by a filibuster, we'll use reconciliation to go after tax reform. So those would be what I call, Dennis, the two centerpieces of our legislative agenda this year. Repeal and replace of Obamacare, but it has to be done in 2 stages, and then tax reform. There'll be a lot of other things we'll deal with, building a wall, immigration reform, those kinds of things, but the 2 biggies will be what to do with Obamacare and how do we simplify our tax code through tax reform.
We went through a lot of time here real quick. We had 30 minutes. We got about 3 minutes left. In closing, on this, and we really appreciate and want to get you back in and talk maybe more in detail as we go forward. And I know immigration is a big thing, and obviously the Obamacare thing is on a lot of people's minds, not even thinking about all the situations worldwide that we run into. But as you go forward, maybe what is Obamacare going to be the main thing that you think needs to be priority number one?
It does, yeah. I mean, it's 12.5%, 13% of the economy, and we know it's failing.
Yes.
It's collapsing under its own weight. People's premiums have gone up. Their deductibles have gone sky high. They can't use they couldn't keep their coverage. They couldn't use their practicing physician of preference. And so there were things about Obamacare that just weren't delivered. We think we need to scrap it and replace it. And I hope it's done side by side, not within the same bill, but in time relatively close to each other, so that people who have pre-existing conditions or kids on their insurance till they're 26, parents' insurance, those kinds of things, if they're going to be in our replacement plan, people need to know that going in so that we can reduce the anxiety, tamp that down. People don't need to be afraid right now. We haven't coalesced around a strategy yet, but those will be some of the things that we'll ensure are part of that replacement strategy. We've also got a Supreme Court justice, a hearing, I think, March 20th, and then confirmation thereafter. What the Senate Democrats are going to do or not do. Will they filibuster this thing? Will Mitch have to come back with a nuclear option? I mean, that's all in play. We still don't have all of the presidential appointments finished, so there's still a lot of work in the Senate. And we're doing Congressional Review Act actions right now on midnight rules. In the last 60 days of the Obama administration, one by one, we're taking these rules that were promulgated out and getting those to the desk of the president. And then, you mentioned national security, and we don't have time to go into it here.
I tell you what, let's do. I didn't want to interrupt you. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. There's some stuff we want to hear. Let's just take a quick break, come back, and let's get into a little bit more. We're going to take some more time, and because you've got a lot of important things here that I think your constituents want to hear about. And so let's take a break and come back in just a moment.
Spring has already started at Sisters Flower and Gift Shop. The ladies at Sisters have created some beautiful spring floral arrangements, and new home accent items are arriving daily. You'll also find a good selection of centerpieces, wall decor, and many other great gift items. Come by and check out their new baby section with gift ideas for both mom and baby. From handcrafted dinnerware, serving pieces, tabletop items, and licensed Razorback products, Sisters has just the right gift item for any occasion. Catch the spring fever at Sisters Flower and Gift Shop. We are so much more than flowers.
Join Sammy Klein Thursdays and Fridays during the TKO8 local newscast for this week's closing livestock market report, made possible by Quality Feed Grains of Harrison and Bellefonte. Quality Feed Grains has you covered. Everything for cattle, pets, deer, equine, poultry, seed and spray, show feed, and garden. Check their website, qualityfeedgrains.com, now for this month's special. Quality Feed Grains of Harrison and Bellefonte, proud sponsors of the Livestock Report with Sammy Klein on Harrison's broadcast station TKO Channel 8.
My name is Deborah. I work at Dental Creations on the Square in Harrison. Not only do I work at the front desk, but I'm also a dental assistant. So I'm seeing you from the beginning, throughout the whole process, and even at the end of the process. We're happy to help in any way we possibly can, and I think that sets us apart from most offices. We don't just hustle you through here just to make a dollar. We're here for you, and we want to do the best we can for you.
Dental Creations on the Square in Harrison, next to the Big Red Boot.
Even the best of us make mistakes, so when trouble finds you, trust Campbell Bonding Company to help you through what can be a confusing and sometimes frightening experience. Jim, Robert, and Cole Campbell work as a family to offer your family understanding and compassion during a very difficult time. Campbell Bonding Company can help get your family back together quickly and confidentially. And in every step of the process, they're there for you. In times of trouble, let their family help your family. Campbell Bonding Company, 870-741-1138.
Back on Connection here on TKO8 Television. Dennis King, thanks for joining us on our special show today. We have 3rd District Congressman Steve Womack in the studio talking about a lot of important things to all of us out there and kind of giving us an overview of what's taking place with this new administration in Washington, D.C. Thanks, Congressman, again for coming in. I kind of stopped you there, so just go right ahead, and I'm going to let you kind of continue on. We're talking about, obviously, Obamacare. We're talking about immigration, which is a major factor there. Health care, on most people's minds, probably the most important thing that they're thinking about these days because it affects everybody.
And you're right. But we were talking national security a minute ago. There's not a person in my district that I talk to that believes the world is safer now than it was 5 or 6 years ago. And you see it everywhere. There is a lot of conflict going on around the world. And we have real or at least perceived threats from Russia. And I've been in the Eastern European theater. Right after Crimea, I went to the near the Donbass region of Ukraine, and I saw what was going on in eastern Ukraine. And then more recently than that, with some of the buildup of forces in the Baltic states, I went to Latvia, spent some time there, and with U.S. Army Europe, and have a pretty good understanding of the complexity of defending Eastern Europe against a potential Russian uprising. And I mean, there are some critical places. I mean, when you look at the length of that border, as it were, from Crimea all the way to the Baltics, there are complications, and Putin has put Russian forces in a position to really control a lot of that territory. So our Article 5 responsibilities through the NATO agreement are pretty important to me. And so what we will do with our European Reassurance Initiative and how we will continue to be able to respond in the event that our neighbors and our friends in NATO were to be under some kind of an incursion, I think is really, really important. We shouldn't discount the potential there. And then you've got what's going on in the South China Sea, the building of the Spratly Islands. Just recently this week, the structures are all but complete that would house surface-to-air missiles, and there's a lot of concern about what's going to happen to the commerce routes in that region of the world, which is where a lot of commerce originates and navigates. Iran, the nuclear deal that all but gives them the capacity to develop a nuclear weapon in the second 10-year frame, and the ongoing struggles that we have with dealing with that regime there, which is not friendly and never going to be friendly to the United States of America. We got a kook in North Korea with a finger on the trigger, and missile testing, and I'm deeply worried about what happens in that region. So it's an unstable world. And I haven't even mentioned ISIS or some of the problems associated with the Middle East and down into Africa. But I say all that to say this: we cannot continue to chip away at the national defense structure, our apparatus, our people, our training, our equipment, our acquisition programs. We still need to be pursuing, through these acquisition programs, that next generation of warfighting capability that gives us the edge, which we've always enjoyed. And we've got near peers now in some of these areas. So national security, the defense of our country, the single most important thing that we sign up to do if we're elected to Congress, and that's protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's in our oath. Those things can only be accomplished if we maintain our edge in technology and in people and in leadership, and that does cost money. So that's going to be critically important. And then beyond that, there are needs here locally, infrastructure needs. We've talked about Obamacare and health care needs, and President Trump has indicated that he doesn't want to mess with the social safety net program, the Medicare, the Medicaid, the Social Security piece. But it's 2/3 of government spending, and we're $500 or $600 billion in deficit. We're $20 trillion in debt, And if we're ever going to get our arms around the escalating debt of our country that's going on to our kids and grandkids, then we're going to have to make some changes in some of these structures. And what that's going to look like, we don't know. But you don't have to really have third grade math to understand that if you're going to spend $500 or $600 billion more than you take in, you either better grow your economy exponentially, or you better cut a bunch of spending, and remember 2/3 of it's on autopilot, or you're going to have to look at some kind of revenue structure. And nobody wants to talk about that. So we've got deep, deep challenges facing our country, and they all have a price tag. And this American exceptionalism, I think, is kind of in the crosshairs right now. So we've got to figure out a way to make the right kinds of courageous decisions that hold people accountable and responsible for their actions, and incentivize people to get their fannies to work and be productive rather than taking from this system. And this is going to require some changes in the American lifestyle today. There are too many people that are receiving that could be producing, and we've got to figure out a way to make all that happen. And so got a lot of changes that need to take place, and we've got to deal with them one by one. Tax code, Obamacare, infrastructure, national security, on and on and on and on and on. I mean, there's just no end to it.
Congressman, you've heard President Trump talk about this even through as he ran for president of the United States about fake media. So I'm going to use that word fake media since it's been used a lot, where a lot of big media doesn't necessarily mean just television media, but print media, some of the big newspapers, some of the big networks, trying to skew, if you will, the thought process of people that are not necessarily correct. Where do you see that maybe going to the next levels down, which like local media and regional media in these markets? I know, he's changed up the whole way that they do the press conferences now. It's not like it used to be. Mm-hmm. He really wants, whether you like it or not, he's big on the Twitter account, sending stuff out, trying to touch individuals directly with what really is the truth, whether you like it or not. But he wants to tell the story where it's not expounded on in a negative form. What do you see that? Or do you see that in your districts? Do you hear people talk about it?
A little bit, but let me say this about the media. And I agree with many of the assertions about what's happened, particularly at the national media level. The cable news networks, the big networks, all of that big money network bureaucracy. I totally agree that they are, in many cases, establishments in pursuit of certain agendas. They're not reporting the news. In many cases, they're creating the news. In the social media phenomenon that's happened in our country, this ability for us to instantaneously know information, things, whether fact or fiction, but people can publish tweets, they can get on Facebook, they can re-engineer news, and so it's hard to really know where you can go today and get what we believe will be reliable information. And so in many respects, the president feels like he's got to tell them from his Twitter account, this is the truth. This is what we're doing. Don't believe everything you read. Look, I'm a member of Congress. I totally understand how people can get things off the internet from anonymous sources, and because of human nature, if it matches their cynicism on a given subject, then people latch onto it. They naturally gravitate to it because it agrees with what they believe. Forget whether it's true or not, but there's a lot of examples out there of that. What I want people to do is be alert to the fact that not everything you read or see on the internet or through social media is the truth, and kind of do your own homework. And if you have a question, then we have resources available to us that we can go get the truth as we know it through congressional research and other things. So, but it's a phenomenon that we have to deal with, and so many people are influenced by what they see and read on some of these sources. I have a characterization of what this is. I call it the hijacking of American thought, and that is that too many other people are influencing what we believe. We see it on a cable news show, and we count it as gospel. We see it on the internet, and we believe it's scripture. You know, we just see all this stuff, and too many people are willing to accept that point of view because they're cynical, and they move in that direction, as opposed to sitting back and developing their own thought process on a given subject. And you can take any subject in the press today, and I can show you many examples as to how people have it a little bit confused, or it may not track exactly the way they think it does, because so many different people are inputting that thought process. So do your own homework. Understand that not everything is what you see or read. And old Lou Holtz said it one time very, very articulately. He said, nothing is ever as bad or as worse as it seems. The truth is usually somewhere in between. Yeah. So I struggle with that from time to time, but I call it the hijacking of American thought.
Congressman, it's been a pleasure having you in the studio today, and we do appreciate you stopping in. Everyone in the viewing audience, we hope you enjoyed our special show today, so Congressman Womack could talk about all the many things that's going on in Washington, D.C. Everybody's anxious to see change. Change is happening. It's happening very rapidly. It's not always going to be exactly what everybody wants it to be, but overall, I think we're going in the right direction. It's going to take a lot of work, and individuals like yourself that are representing the people. We do appreciate all the work you're doing. We hope we continue in that direction.
Thank you. It's been a great honor to be with you today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on Connection today. 3rd District Congressman Steve Womack in the studio. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you again next time.
Sam Alexander Pharmacy has expanded and is now offering many additional products and services. Their new pharmaceutical compounding area allows them to create products to fit the unique needs of a customer. They also have added Spinco orthotic shoes and sandals, Dr. Comfort diabetic shoes, baby gifts by Aiden and Anais, and toys by Melissa and Doug. Stop in today and let them help you with any of your specialty pharmaceutical needs. Sam Alexander Pharmacy, your local Health Mart pharmacy in Harrison.
Join Sammy Klein Thursdays and Fridays during the TKO8 local newscast for this week's closing livestock market report, made possible by Quality Feed Grains of Harrison and Bellefonte. Quality Feed Grains has you covered. Everything for cattle, pets, deer, equine, poultry, seed and spray, show feed, and garden. Check their website, qualityfeedgrains.com, now for this month's special. Quality Feed Grains of Harrison and Bellefonte, proud sponsors of the Livestock Report with Sammy Klein on Harrison's broadcast station TKO Channel 8.
Crystal clear mountain streams, river rapids, and rolling hills with endless valleys. The beauty of the Ozarks we often take for granted. At Magnus Toyota, we never underestimate the value of our customers. As a third-generation family-owned business, Magnus Toyota has been operating here in the Ozarks for over 50 years. When we make a new deal, we make a new friend. Stop in and visit us today and see why our customers say we're the best. Magnus Toyota, your hometown Toyota dealer on Highway 65 North in Harrison.
Local television worth watching. KTKO Channel 8, Harrison.